Utah Conversations with Ted Capener is made possible by the members of KUED in partnership with Jerry Taylor and Edna Anderson Taylor, proud to support local KUED programming. The Larry S. and Allison Smith Challenge Fund, encouraging individuals and businesses throughout Utah to support KUED community affairs programming.
He has worked for decades to empower ordinary citizens to take extraordinary action to end poverty and hunger and to build local economies. Now he hopes to employ similar efforts to clean up the environment. A conversation with Sam Daley-Harris next. Sam Daley-Harris founded Results in 1980, the Microcredit Summit in 1995, and the Center for Citizen Empowerment and Transformation in 2012. The 20th anniversary edition of his book, Reclaiming Our Democracy, has just been published. Sam Daley-Harris, thank you very much for being here.
It's great to be here.
Your work over these many years has impacted favorably literally millions of people around the globe. Results has had results.
Yes, but it's in some sense it's clear that it's not my work. It's the work of waking up, encouraging, and empowering citizens all around the United States and in other countries to speak up for ending global poverty on very specific issues.
Yeah, and it has worked.
Well, for example, most people, I'm on a 22-city lecture tour and talking mostly to college campuses.
Yeah.
But when I say that 41,000 kids under the age of 5 were dying every day from mostly preventable things, like measles coupled with malnutrition in 1984, and that 41,000's gone down to 18,000 a day. It's still scandalously high, but people mostly don't know about that kind of progress. So when I say 150 million elementary school kids were not in school in the mid-'80s around the world, and now it's 57 million, it's important progress, still scandalously high, but people don't know that some things are working and some difference is being made. And in the case of Results, it's because ordinary citizens let go of the hopelessness, started to do their homework, and began to speak up.
So you really do believe that citizens can and do make a difference?
Because I've seen it, yeah, over and over.
Your book called Reclaiming Our Democracy, which this is the 20th edition.
Right.
Actually, you put new chapters in from time to time.
That's right.
And now you're going to deal with the environment, about which we'll talk in a moment. But reclaiming our democracy, you've sort of just told us what you mean by that, that people can make a difference through a democratic process. What about when there is no democratic process?
Well, you know, inherent in the question is, when we look at what's going on in Washington, shouldn't we throw up our hands? Shouldn't we be hopeless about it? And I tried that. I started hopeless 35 years ago. And actually, the change for me started, it kind of lives in a quote by Mark Twain, who said, the 2 most important days of your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why. And the why piece is really important. And when I was a senior in high school, I learned that a high school fraternity brother a year younger than I had died, and 4 years later, college graduation day, Robert Kennedy was assassinated around that time. And these deaths actually caused me to start asking, why am I here? What am I here to do? But then 9 years later, I go to a presentation on world hunger, about which I felt hopeless, thinking there were no solutions, because if there were solutions, somebody would have done something. I go and realize there's no mystery to growing food or clean water. I'm not hopeless about the lack of solutions. I'm hopeless about human nature, that people will just never get around to doing what could be done on world hunger, but realize, of course, there's one human nature I have some control over, my own. And the end of this story is I speak to 7,000 high school students in 1978 and 79, But before I go in, I read expert panels calling for the political will to end hunger. So I asked 7,000 high school students, what's the name of your member of Congress? 200 knew, fewer than 3%, 6,800 didn't know. And results started out of that gap between the calls for the political will to end hunger on the one hand and the lack of basic information on who represented us in Washington. So I actually started with the hopelessness. Once I let it go and got moving and enrolled others, I saw, frankly, miracles happen in terms of change in Congress. You know, it's getting a little sticky these days, but I'm not going to revert back to the old hopelessness.
You know, you talked about spirituality in one of the speeches I saw you give, and your personal transformation. You just mentioned that.
Right.
Had a friend, a 17-year-old friend who died. You then decided to ask yourself, why am I here?
Yeah.
You've answered that question.
Well, you know, I think everyone in an introspective moment would agree that a serious part of why we're here is to give back, to make a difference, contribute, to leave the campsite cleaner than we found it. The trouble is that's smothered by hopelessness and despair and discouragement. And when that's stripped away, then our natural desire to matter can get expressed rather than suppressed.
Well, the idea of can one person really make a difference? In your book, you quote Margaret Mead, who says, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has."
Yeah, yeah. And so when Results was lobbying in 1987 on microcredit, when nobody had heard about it.
Yeah, yeah.
And the volunteers generated 100 editorials, not letters, but editorials and papers supporting this new intervention. That was an example of how a small group of committed people could do their homework, you know, pick up the phone a little nervous, call the newspaper and more, you know, and really begin to get the word out about something that people had never heard of.
You know, the microcredit story is incredible. I've heard you tell that story, and it just has worked miracles in certain parts of the world, hasn't it?
Exactly. Some of it's gone a little off course when they focus too much on the investors. But when Muhammad Yunus went into a village next to his campus because there was a famine in Bangladesh, and he asked this question. It's a similar kind of a moment for him. He asked, I want to go in the village. There were people virtually dying on the doorsteps of his campus in the 70s due to the famine. He said, I want to go in the village and next to my campus to see if I can be of use to one person for one day. Yeah. And he meets a woman who's making bamboo stools for sitting on. He says, how much money profit every day? She says, 2 pennies a day. He says, how is that possible? It's a beautiful stool. She said, well, I don't have the money to buy the bamboo. I have to borrow it from a trader, a moneylender, on the condition that I sell the finished product back to him. Yeah. And he
gets all the money.
Exactly. Yeah. And so he has a student who goes around the village to find out, is she alone or is there others? 42 people who need a grand total of $27, less than $1 each, to pay off the moneylender, buy their raw materials, make their product. He lends it from his pocket. This woman goes from 2 pennies a day profit to $1.25 a day immediately because she can sell.
Is that still working?
It is working. The challenge in the field is that there's been this fork in the road. And one fork asks, what more can we do for the well-being of our clients? That's the working part. Another fork asks, what more can we do for the well-being of our investors? That's not working so well. So it's a disappointment, but there's massive inspiration all around the field too.
My wife asked me when I was talking about microcredit with her, where does the money come from?
Well, it depends. I mean, so in a bank like Grameen Bank, they can take deposits like a bank and on lend those deposits. So in that case, that's where it comes from.
With little interest.
With little interest, absolutely. And for, you know, when you're giving a $100 loan, it's more costly than when you're giving a $100,000 loan or a $500,000 loan. But so that's that case. But in other cases, it might be investors whose money is coming in. It might be from donors. Kiva.org is.
And you've changed the economic picture in many parts of the world through that kind of activity. You talked earlier about the health benefits that have derived, and we want to tell people that there is a chapter of results here in Utah. We have the number, the name of the person, and the number we're going to put on the screen for results. This is Debbie Baskin.
That's right.
And here's the number, 801-657-2568. So if anyone wants to, go ahead. Go ahead.
If I can make this distinction about results and about the other group we'll talk about in a moment, Citizens Climate Lobby, what they offer is a structure of support. You're not on your own. So for example, there's a monthly conference call. In the case of results, Jeffrey Sachs, the scientist, economist from Columbia University, was a conference call guest. The next month it was Paul Farmer, whose work with Partners in Health. Tracy Kidder's book, Mountains Beyond Mountains, talks about his work. Muhammad Yunus was also a guest recently. So you're in this kind of curriculum to help you go deeper with these issues and become, frankly, more expert. And so there's a drawing on one page of the new chapter, one of the new chapters. On one side of the page is a small circle labeled your comfort zone. To the right is a much larger circle that's labeled where the magic happens. What people need to do is find an organization that can help them move from their comfort zone over to where the magic happens. And the magic is when you see your dream about ending poverty or solving climate change in the local paper or in your congressman's awareness and the like.
How helpful overall has our Congress, our government been in bringing about some of the changes that you have seen?
Well, up until now, they've been very helpful. I mean, some foot draggers, but again, when we talk about 1986, when we started lobbying, 1 million around the world had a microloan of the very poor. Now it's 124 million. Congress helped. That means the American public helped. Didn't do it all. You know, when 150 million kids were out of elementary school, now it's 57 million out of elementary school. Congress helped. Didn't do it all. That means the American public helped. But I think people want to do that. There's a quote by the late Republican Senator Mark Hatfield, who said, "We stand by as children starve by the millions because we lack the will to eliminate hunger. Yet we've found the will to develop missiles capable of flying over the polar cap and landing within a few hundred feet of their target. This is not innovation. It is a profound distortion of humanity's purpose on Earth." End of quote. And I think that's more the why again. Why are we here? Are we here to sit around with 18,000 kids dying every day from preventable things?
Of course, Mark Hatfield, in my opinion, had a spiritual transformation like you. And I don't know how many members of, never mind, of Congress now.
There's time.
Now have had that. Okay, you talked about poverty, purpose, pitfalls, and redemption. What do you mean by redemption?
Well, I tell this story in a TEDx talk that I do about a woman who started a microcredit program in the slums of Kenya. And after the rioting, after the election several years ago, there was a burned down market stall. And this microcredit group got money to rebuild the stall. And they said, we have to find the rioters and get them to help rebuild the stall. They found the gang, and the leader of the gang was known as the general, and they convinced the gang. First they said, I was very upset when your staff came to talk to me. They didn't understand how dangerous I was.
Because I've heard that story.
Yeah, exactly. But they convinced the gang to guard the materials at night. They paid them, actually, and to help rebuild with others during the day. And after they rebuilt, the gang leader and about a third of the gang got involved in microcredit. And he had a little success with a little business that he started. He went back to his home village, and he said, my mother cried for 3 days. She was so happy how I turned my life around. Well, that's redemption, when you go from gang leader destroying a market to rebuilding it and, frankly, rebuilding your life. That's the redemption that this microloans had brought to him.
You've helped thousands of ordinary citizens transform from hopeless bystanders to powerful advocates. We've talked about that. Now you want to do something about the climate, climate change.
That's right.
Will these same standards put forth in your book, about which Jimmy Carter says is a great roadmap for global involvement?
Yes.
Will this map work for climate change?
Yes. I mean, not yet, but yes.
Okay.
Well, let me give you a couple of quick examples.
Okay.
I mean, part of the deal is this structure of support. Again, the conference call, the guest speakers, the Q&A, the getting more articulate. This group, a Citizens Climate Lobby, they didn't exist 6 years ago. Now, their volunteers in the U.S. and Canada have had 998 letters to the editor published in the first 10 months of 2013. They've had 669 meetings with members of Congress and their staff. Let me tell you this one story. There's a volunteer in Citizen Climate Lobby. She's in the Richmond, Virginia area. Congressman is Eric Cantor. The newspaper is the Richmond Times-Dispatch. And she said, before I joined, I was suffering from climate trauma. I would read Bill McKibben's book, Earth, and I would weep at home and I'd weep at work. She then got involved. 18 months later, she's co-leading a workshop on building relationships with members of Congress and editorial writers. And in describing it, she says, I needed a model for building a relationship. I adore romantic relationships, so I use romance as my model. That first meeting with the editorial writer, it's like a blind date, only you've decided ahead of time you're going to marry this fellow. You're going to be sweet and interesting. If it doesn't work with the editorial writer, you'll marry one of his friends at the paper, environment writer, business editor, someone. The last part of her quote, it's a great longer thing, but at the end she talks this way, and if I just want to read it, it's so brilliant. She said, during our conference a year ago, I met with 20 congressional offices. I met with many folks whose view of the world was very different than mine. Going into their offices was hard. I had to let go of a lot of emotional baggage. I could no longer judge them or hold hostility in my heart toward them. I had to let go of my fear of climate change, my fear that they wouldn't listen to me. I had to center myself in love, releasing fear and centering in love. This is sacred and profound work, end of quote. Well, this is someone who started at climate trauma, and now she's saying meeting with 20 congressional offices is sacred and profound work. Now, I think most people, if I asked them to meet with 20 congressional offices on global poverty or climate change, would say, well, this is dirty work or hopeless work. I think we need to get to the, this is sacred and profound work. And you do that with group support and with focus and with a rich curriculum to take you from kindergarten as a citizen activist to college as a citizen activist.
You know, I think many people believe, I'm sure many people believe, that taking care of the earth is a sacred obligation.
But feel hopeless about having any voice. I can't fight City Hall, no one will listen to me. We got to let that part go so we can get to the sacred obligation.
You know, you have a group here on the Citizen Climate.
That's right.
And the name of the person is going to be on the screen in just a moment.
Yes.
Dave Folland. And here's his number, 801-942-1426. And we'll have his email. And if people are interested in becoming involved in this important endeavor, they should contact this man, right?
And what I say to people is, you should even if you have some other issue you're interested in, you should either join Results or Citizen Climate Lobby, learn the methodology to steal it, and take it back to another issue that you might be committed to. Because there's something special going on in the empowerment of grassroots citizens.
Well, you say you can heal the break between people and their government. That says the subhead of your book.
That's right.
You really believe that?
Well, I do. There's this great quote by Apollo astronaut Rusty Schweickart, who said, "We aren't passengers on spaceship Earth. We're the crew. We aren't residents on this planet. We're citizens."
Yeah.
We said we aren't residents on this planet. We're citizens.
Yeah.
The difference in both cases is responsibility.
Yeah.
And I used to say in the mid-'80s, when we were just getting going in results, we'd get up out of our passenger seat and go up to the cockpit and notice there was nobody up there. And we need to do our homework and get up and educate those in the cockpit so that they can do the job that needs to get done on global poverty.
We are not passengers
on spaceship Earth.
We're the crew. We're the crew.
Yeah, and that's when people realize that, because there's some inherent, almost ugly, but inherent truth in that, and that okay, I guess that's true, and then we have to find a way.
Now, okay, so you have had great success in various parts of the world on these many, many highly worthwhile endeavors. But what about, let's look at climate change.
Yes.
What about the big polluters besides the United States of America, China, and India? Can you develop success stories there too, do you think?
Well, I think so. I mean, recently there was a column in the Tribune by Thomas Friedman where he was saying, what does it matter if you have a booming economy if you can't breathe?
Yeah, I read
so
it.
I think they're going to realize, in a sense, get their own act together too. So for the moment, our attention is, in a sense, our own house in order. But I think other countries are coming to the realization that the quality of life is dependent on the quality of the environment.
But in some of your other endeavors with results, all the results you've had, you've worked with other governments besides ours.
True, and now Citizen Climate Lobby is in Canada now. I'll be at their conference in a couple of weeks. They're going to move to some other countries. It's a model that will spread, I'm sure.
Well, let's put those two things back on. Dave Folland is the climate person, and Al, let's put the other person on the results group.
Yes.
Put them back on the screen again while I ask Sam Daley-Harris about his private and personal life. I always get private and personal with people.
Okay.
Well, not too much.
Okay.
But it's interesting. You have a degree in music.
Yes.
And tell me what happened after that.
Well, I played percussion instruments in the Miami Philharmonic for 12 years, and I was a musician, and I was a musician who was oblivious to poverty issues and the like, and it was slowly through losing that friend and Robert Kennedy's death that I began asking some of why am I here questions, and then frankly bumped into global poverty through the Hunger Project and realized my perceptions were off. And the more I got into it, the more I saw I could make a difference, and the more I worked on that, and it kind of took a turn.
Well, you're an idealist.
I think we're all idealists with that smothering of the idealism, hungering for the smothering to go away so that our own idealism, there's a great quote by Anonymous, "Be outrageous. It's the only place that isn't crowded."
That's right.
Well, hopeless is crowded and discouraged is crowded, but being outrageous with your civic voice is not crowded. So let's crowd it up a bit.
Okay, but I can't leave your music thing for a bit. You played with the Miami Philharmonic for 12 years, and you are a songwriter.
That's right.
Tell me a famous song.
I
was going to ask you to sing a song, but I don't think that'd be fair. You seriously are a songwriter?
Well, I think a lot of people
you're like
are songwriters.
Orrin Hatch. He's a songwriter.
Well, nearly. Yes. I'm not him nearly. I'm nearly like Orrin Hatch.
Okay.
But I've enjoyed writing songs over the years. It's a thrill. I think there's also a connection between the music and the creativity and seeing some connections when you're trying to draft an op-ed or when you're trying to get someone's attention in a letter to the editor. Those connections help with the music and creativity in a way.
Your wife is an ordained Presbyterian minister.
Yes.
And works with the child, what?
The Children's Defense Fund.
Defense Fund,
Marion Wright Edelman founded it 40 years ago, actually. And Shannon's been with them for 23 years.
You have a son and a daughter.
Yes,
live in
Micah
Princeton, New Jersey.
is 15, and Sophie is 12.
Sam, we have just about a minute left, and I want to ask you this final question. You are traveling across the country with your new book and with your message, which isn't new, but it's so significant.
And it sounds new, sadly enough.
Yeah. But and you talk to student groups.
Yes.
Are students going to make a difference? Are they going to help bring about these changes?
Well, they need to. They better for.
Are they different now? Are students, have they changed?
Well, they've changed in some ways. I mean, this whole student involvement in the community is much broader than when I was in high school.
Yeah.
But the obliviousness on political action is still, sadly, a bit quiet.
And you're working on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Thanks for all you've done and all you do.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us. If you want to view this or any past conversation, you can visit our website at KUED.org. Be sure to tune in next Sunday at 5:30 for another Utah Conversation. Until then, I'm Ted Capener. Good evening.